It's a freezing winter morning in Central Park, the kind where people duck their heads and keep their hands deep in their pockets to escape the wind. Among them is Emma, a 26-year-old rushing toward her office, checking emails and nursing a coffee while navigating the morning crowd. As she passes bench 7, she moves past a man in a thin, torn coat, sitting perfectly still. He is a stationary, physical reality, but he remains entirely untouched by the blur of people moving around him. Emma hesitates for a second. She feels the weight of a guilty impulse, a small internal prompt to stop. But then she glances at her phone, thinks about her schedule, and keeps walking. This reaction is common. In crowded public spaces, we often develop a reflexive, collective blindness. We subconsciously filter out the suffering of others to avoid the emotional weight of acknowledging it, allowing ourselves to see people as part of the scenery rather than as individuals. In this environment, Emma's focus is entirely on her own destination. At this moment, Walter is just a figure on a bench, and Emma is just another passerby, choosing the comfort of her own distraction. The next day, Emma makes a different choice. She stops at the bench, offers him an extra coffee, and initiates a conversation with a simple, "Good morning." That single interaction soon turns into a daily commitment. Over the following weeks, their 5-minute morning chats transform him from a nameless figure into a person with a name, Walter. Walter wasn't always here. He spent his career as a high school history teacher, a man who spent his life explaining the past to the next generation. His life changed because of a specific financial sequence. This chart represents his steady savings, suddenly consumed by an avalanche of compounding medical bills following his wife's death. The debt exceeded his ability to pay, swallowing his home, leaving him no financial safety net. Despite these losses, Walter is not bitter. He speaks to Emma with the same curiosity he likely gave his students. Their bond exists because Emma's presence acknowledges his dignity, proving that he still has a place in the world. One morning, the pattern breaks. Emma arrives at bench 7, but Walter isn't there. He doesn't show up the next day either. As a week passes with no sign of him, Emma's mild concern turns into a genuine, persistent anxiety. She begins checking nearby locations, eventually making her way to a local shelter to ask if anyone knows where he went. She finds a volunteer who recognizes his photo. But instead of providing a location, the volunteer explains that Walter passed away a month ago. The shock Emma feels reveals how much the dynamic had shifted. Walter was no longer a stranger to be ignored or pitied from a distance. He was a friend, and his absence leaves a specific personal void. At the shelter, the volunteer hands Emma a sealed envelope. On the front, Walter had written her name. In the letter, Walter explains that while Emma was focused on the coffee she brought, his focus was on the fact that she stopped. He writes that for the first time in years, he felt visible. Tucked at the bottom of the envelope is a small key and a note for a storage unit, Unit 214. When Emma opens the unit, she finds stacks of notebooks. They contain Walter's life's work, meticulously written memoirs, historical analyses, and decades of lessons he had never shared. He left this entire intellectual history to Emma. He chose her because she was the only person who had looked at him and acknowledged that he had a story worth telling. 1 year later, Emma is in a bookstore, but not as a customer. She's there as a writer. She has published Walter's notebooks as a book titled Lessons from Bench 7. The dedication page reads, "Walter, thank you for teaching me that every